Imagine a desperate mother with a crying baby, begging at a ranch gate for just a few coins to buy milk. The hard-faced rancher is about to turn her away, but then his own little girl, who hadn't spoken a word in months, suddenly whispers, "Don't send her away, Papa." What happens next will change everything for these three broken souls. Stay with me to see how a simple plea for milk turns into a fight for a family. The Kansas sun was a heavy blanket, making the air shimmer and the dry earth crack. Eliza Moore felt it bake right through her thin dress as she walked that final dusty mile to the Redfield Ranch, clutching her baby boy, Thomas. "Hush now," she rasped, her own throat bone dry. She'd been on her feet since dawn, driven by a mother's fierce need. Her legs shook with every step, but she kept going. The ranch was owned by Ethan Cole, a man known across 3 counties for being as tough as the land he'd tamed. They said he was fair, but never soft. Eliza prayed the stories were true. She needed him to be a man who would at least listen before shutting the gate in her face. The sprawling ranch looked well kept and prosperous, a world away from the poverty that was choking her. Taking a shaky breath, she pushed open the heavy iron gate. She was halfway to the main house when a sharp voice stopped her cold. "That's far enough." A tall, broad-shouldered man stepped out from the barn. It was Ethan Cole, his face weathered and his storm cloud eyes sizing her up in an instant. "I'm Eliza Moore, sir," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. He stood about 10 feet away, watching her like a hawk. "I'm sorry to trouble you, but You need something," he cut in. It wasn't a question. His gaze dropped to the nearly empty basket on her arm. "Everyone who comes to this gate needs something." The words stung, but she met his hard stare. "I need to buy milk for my son. I can trade eggs, or I can work. I can cook, clean, anything." He looked at her for a long moment. "I don't run a charity, Mrs. Moore." "I'm not asking for charity," she replied, her voice rising with desperation. "I am asking for a chance to earn my way." He paused, his expression unreadable. "Where's your husband?" The question hit her like a physical blow. "He's gone, sir. Fever took him 2 months ago." Before Ethan could give his final answer, the front door of the house creaked open. A small girl, maybe 7 or 8 years old, stood in the doorway. She looked pale and lost, with tangled hair and bare feet on the hot porch boards. "Lucy." Ethan's voice changed completely, losing all its sharp edges. "Go back inside." But the little girl's eyes were fixed on the bundle in Eliza's arms. "Is that a baby?" she whispered, her voice filled with awe. Ignoring her father, she walked slowly across the yard, her gaze never leaving the child. "Can I see him?" Lucy asked, stopping just a few feet away. Eliza glanced at Ethan, who gave a slight, resigned nod. She carefully pulled back the blanket, revealing baby Thomas's face. Lucy stared, then slowly reached out a tiny finger and gently touched the baby's hand. Thomas's small fingers immediately wrapped around hers. A beautiful sound, somewhere between a gasp and a laugh, escaped the little girl's lips. "He's holding my hand," she whispered, her face shining with pure joy. And in that one small moment, Eliza saw the hard look on Ethan Cole's face finally begin to soften. Ethan's tired eyes took in Eliza's worn-out face. "You look like you're about to drop," he said, his voice rough. "Come on up to the house and get some water before we talk business." Eliza could only nod and follow him, her legs shaking. The little girl, Lucy, stayed close, staring at the baby. Inside, the house was dark and cool, a single room for cooking and living. It was clean but bare, with just a long, scrubbed table in the middle. "Sit," Ethan ordered, pointing to a chair. Eliza collapsed into it, her whole body aching with relief as she placed her basket on the floor. Ethan pumped cool water into a tin cup. Eliza drank it down like she had been wandering the desert for a week. As the baby started crying hard, Lucy sat right beside her, watching him with big, serious eyes. "He's hungry," the girl said. Eliza's stomach clenched. She knew she had nothing left for him and nowhere to go if this man turned her away. Ethan's stare was sharp, and she felt a flush of shame. "When did you last have a proper meal?" he asked. "I had some bread," she started. "That's not what I asked," he cut in. Her voice was barely a whisper. "Yesterday." His jaw set tight. Without a word, he put a loaf of bread, some cheese, and apple butter on the table. "Eat," he commanded. Her pride screamed no, but her starving body and her crying baby left her no choice. She ate slowly, trying not to look desperate, while Lucy watched. "Papa," Lucy said suddenly, "the baby needs milk. We should give her some." "I know, sweetheart, but we have plenty." "It is not that simple, Lucy." "Why not?" the girl asked. "We have it. She needs it." Ethan sighed, a deep and weary sound. "Go check the chicken's water, please." Lucy gave the baby one last look and slipped outside, leaving Eliza alone with the man and her wailing son. After she ate, Ethan sat across from her. "All right, Mrs. Moore, let's not waste time. You showing up here with a baby and no belongings tells me you are desperate, and desperate folks mean trouble." "I am not trouble," Eliza said, her voice firm. "I am a widow trying to feed my son." "Where are your people?" he asked. "They turned their backs on me. All of them." She straightened up. "Mr. Cole, I am not asking for pity. I am asking for work. A fair trade. If that does not suit you, I will move on." It was a hollow threat, and they both knew it. A flicker of respect showed in Ethan's eyes. "You have got grit. I will give you that. But can you work without causing trouble?" "I can outwork any man you have hired," Eliza promised, "and I will not cause a bit of trouble. Just give me 1 week to prove it." He thought for a long moment. "All right, 1 week. You cook, clean, and help where you are needed. In return, you get a room, food, and milk for the boy. After 7 days, I decide. If I say go, you go. No arguments." A wave of relief nearly knocked her over. "Understood. Thank you." "Do not thank me yet," Ethan said, standing up. "The room is off the kitchen. This room used to be for the live-in help, but you can have it. It is not fancy, but it is safe. Get yourself settled and rest up. You can start in the morning." Eliza tried to protest, saying she could start right away, but Ethan's voice was firm. He told her a tired worker was no help to anyone. Rest today, work tomorrow. She was too exhausted to argue. The room was small, with just a bed and a dresser, but it had a window and, more importantly, a lock. Ethan promised to have his daughter Lucy bring in an old cradle from the barn for the baby. Before he left, he paused. He explained that Lucy had been very quiet since her mother passed away 2 years ago, but he noticed that she seemed interested in Eliza and her son, which was unusual for her these days. He left before Eliza could even think of what to say. Eliza stood there, holding her sleeping son, Thomas. The reality of her situation washed over her. She had 1 week, just 7 days, to make herself so useful that Ethan Cole would have to let her stay. It was her only chance to build a future for them. Later, Lucy brought the cradle, a silent but comforting presence in the tiny room. As she ran her hand over the worn wood, she said quietly, "My mama used to sleep in here before she married Papa. She was the housekeeper." The words struck Eliza. So Ethan had married his housekeeper. This changed everything. Was she now expected to follow in the footsteps of a dead woman? She carefully said that Lucy's mother must have been a wonderful person. Lucy agreed, her voice full of sadness. She made Papa laugh. He never laughs anymore. The sorrow in the girl's voice was heartbreaking. That evening, Ethan left a pail of fresh milk outside her door. Eliza fed Thomas, laid him in the cradle, and fell onto the bed, asleep almost instantly. She woke before dawn to the sound of roosters. For a brief second, she was lost, but then she remembered. Redfield Ranch. She had 1 week to prove her worth, and it started now. After tending to Thomas, she went to the kitchen. The house was quiet, but the sounds of the ranch coming to life drifted in from outside. She found what she needed and began making breakfast, her hands moving with old familiarity. The coffee was brewing and flapjacks were sizzling on the stove when Ethan walked in. He stopped, surprised to see her already working. "I thought I told you to start today," he said. "It is today," Eliza replied without missing a beat. "Breakfast should be ready when folks wake up." He grunted, but it sounded like approval. He poured a cup of coffee and watched her work. He asked where she learned to cook, and she simply replied, "My mother." He asked where she was from, and she reluctantly told him Pennsylvania. "A long way from home," he commented. "It is not home anymore," she said, placing a plate of flapjacks on the table. He took a bite, chewed for a moment, and a hint of a smile touched his lips. "Yes, you do know how to cook." It was high praise, and a small spark of hope grew inside her. Lucy came in a few minutes later, her eyes going straight to the room where Thomas was sleeping. Eliza assured her the baby was fine and served her a plate of flapjacks. The girl was so thin. It was clear she had not been well cared for since her mother's death. They ate in a comfortable silence. Ethan stood up, announcing he would be working in the north pasture and telling Lucy to stay near the house. He told Eliza to do whatever needed doing and to ask Lucy if she had any questions. Then he was gone, leaving Eliza alone with his daughter in a house that was starving for a woman's touch. As Eliza began to clean, she found that beneath the surface tidiness was months of neglect. The work ahead was enormous. Lucy followed her everywhere, a quiet little shadow who slowly started to open up. When Thomas woke up, Lucy begged to hold him. Watching the young girl stare at the baby with such wonder, Eliza felt a bond forming between them. "Will you stay after the week is over?" Lucy asked, her voice small. Eliza looked at the hopeful face of the little girl and then at her own son sleeping peacefully. For the first time in a very long time, she felt like she might have a chance to say yes. Lucy's question was a mere whisper. "Do you think Papa will let you stay?" Eliza answered carefully. "Well, I hope so, but that's for your father to decide." The little girl's eyes were serious. "Papa needs help, even if he won't admit it. Ever since Mama died, this whole house has been sad." Eliza's heart ached. "I know, honey. I'm so sorry." "Don't be sorry," Lucy replied simply. "Just stay. Please make it not sad anymore." Eliza offered a warm smile, settling baby Thomas back in his sling. She then rolled up her sleeves and got to it. By late afternoon, the kitchen was spotless, the pantry was in order, and a beef stew was simmering for supper. Lucy had been her little helper through it all. While they were hanging laundry, a ranch hand rode up and did a double take. "Lucy's helping," the girl announced proudly. "Nobody usually lets me." "Well, you're a natural at it," Eliza told her. They moved to the porch to mend a basket of clothes in the fading light. It felt peaceful, almost too peaceful for Eliza, who had learned that quiet moments were often followed by trouble. Sure enough, the sound of an approaching wagon broke the calm. A buckboard appeared, driven by an older woman with iron-gray hair and a perfectly starched dress. Beside her sat a younger woman with fancy blonde curls. Lucy went completely still. "Papa is not going to like this." "Who are they?" Eliza asked, a bad feeling creeping in. "Mrs. Winterton and her daughter, Charlotte. They come around sometimes, but Papa always sends them on their way." Charlotte stepped down from the wagon with a practiced, sugary smile. "Why, Lucy, dear, you look just adorable." Her eyes then shifted to Eliza, taking in the worn dress and the mending basket with a look that was anything but sweet. "Good afternoon," Eliza said evenly, standing with Thomas asleep against her. "And just who might you be?" Mrs. Winterton's voice was sharp. "Eliza Moore, ma'am. I'm the new housekeeper." Charlotte let out a laugh that sounded like tiny fake bells. "A housekeeper? I had no idea Ethan was looking for one. When did you begin?" "Yesterday." Mrs. Winterton stepped onto the porch uninvited, her eyes scanning everything. "Is Mr. Cole at home?" "He is working the north pasture, ma'am." "Then we shall simply have to wait," she declared, sitting in a chair as if she owned it. But Lucy had already slipped quietly back into the house. "She is nothing like her mother," Charlotte remarked. "You recall Sarah, mother, so full of spirit." "Indeed," Mrs. Winterton said, her hard gaze fixed on Eliza. "Tell me, Mrs. Moore, what brings a woman with a baby so far from civilization?" The unspoken question hung heavy in the air. Eliza met her stare without flinching. "I was in need of work, and Mr. Cole needed help." "And your husband?" the woman pressed. "He is dead, ma'am." "How awful," Charlotte said, her voice dripping with false pity. "A fever." "So you have no family to help you?" "No, ma'am." "Well," Mrs. Winterton concluded, "it is quite generous of Mr. Cole to take you in. He always was too kind for his own good." A man's voice cut through the tension. "My wife preferred to be called Sarah." Ethan stood at the bottom of the steps, his face unreadable but his eyes cold as ice. Ethan walked right past them, his dusty boots marking the clean porch. "As you can see, she is fine," he said, then looked to Eliza. "Mrs. Moore, is there coffee?" She understood he was making an excuse to get inside. "Yes, sir, a fresh pot is on." He opened the door, then glanced back. I am sure you ladies have other visits to make. The dismissal was clear. Mrs. Winterton stood up straight, her pride wounded, and Charlotte followed. We will be seeing much more of you, Mrs. Moore, she said, and it sounded like a threat. Eliza just nodded as their wagon pulled away. When they were gone, Ethan let out a long sigh. I apologize for them, he said. They have been trying to marry Charlotte off to me for 2 years. Mrs. Winterton thinks she has some claim on me because she was my wife's mother's friend. She does not. Eliza simply said, I see, and returned to her mending. Do you? Ethan watched her closely. You need to understand. People will talk about a widow with a baby staying here, and some of what they say will not be kind. Eliza's hands stopped moving. She knew her reputation was on the line, but she had no other choice. I understand, Mr. Cole. I am not telling you to leave, he said firmly. I am telling you to be prepared. This ranch is a long way out, but news travels fast. Some will say I am being charitable. Others will think. He did not finish. I understand, Eliza repeated. I have endured worse. A flicker of curiosity showed in his eyes, but he just nodded. Good. Now where is Lucy? She disappeared when they arrived. Ethan's jaw tightened. Charlotte makes her uncomfortable. Just then Thomas began to fuss, and Eliza rocked him. Ethan's gaze fell on the baby, and his hard expression softened just a little. He looks healthy. He is, thanks to your milk, Eliza added. I am grateful for the chance you are giving us. Do not be grateful yet, he answered, his voice a little softer. I will be in for supper in an hour. He walked off toward the barn. Eliza knew this was going to be complicated. The days that followed fell into a surprising rhythm. She made breakfast before dawn, and Ethan would come in from his chores. He never said much, but she noticed he would sometimes pause, as if he had forgotten what it was like to have a warm meal waiting. Lucy became her constant shadow, following her everywhere. The little girl began to talk more in her quiet voice, telling Eliza all about the ranch and her father. Eliza listened to every single word. Mama used to sing while she worked, Lucy said one morning. She said it made the work go faster. Then she added quietly, Papa does not like music anymore. Eliza's heart ached for Lucy, who had lost her mother to death and her father to his own sorrow. By the 4th day, the house was transformed. It was clean and tidy, and Eliza had put jars of wildflowers on the windowsills. It was a small thing, but it made the house feel more like a home. That evening, Ethan paused in the doorway, his eyes taking in all the changes. He did not say a word, but for just a moment, the hardness in his face seemed to ease before he caught himself and looked away. The 3 ranch hands had noticed the changes too. They were weathered men who kept to themselves, but she saw them watching her with a quiet curiosity. On the 5th morning, Eliza was hanging laundry when she heard the sound of horses approaching fast. A familiar fear shot through her, but she forced herself to remain calm. 4 riders came into view. They were dressed like townspeople, not ranchers. 3 men and a woman looked around the property as if they were judging it. The woman was well-dressed and carried herself with the confidence of someone who had never known hardship. Good morning, she called out. Is Mr. Cole available? He is working, ma'am. Can I help you? Eliza answered, walking toward them. And you are? One of the men asked, his tone dripping with condescension. The housekeeper. The woman's smile was sharp. Ah, yes, we had heard rumors. I am Mrs. Patricia Hendricks, and these are my brothers. We own the feed store. We like to know our neighbors. The unspoken message was clear. They were here to inspect her. I am Eliza Moore. Patricia's eyes dropped to Eliza's ringless hand. A widow. How convenient that Mr. Cole needed a housekeeper just as you needed a The question came next, sharp as a knife. Tell me, Mrs. Moore, where did you work before this? Eliza knew it was a trap. I was not working, ma'am. I was caring for my husband and then my son. Before I was married, I lived in Pennsylvania. Model. The woman named Patricia had a smile that didn't reach her eyes. I'm Patricia Hendricks, and these are my brothers. We heard Ethan Cole had hired on some help. Eliza nodded. Eliza Moore. Pittsburgh, is it? Patricia asked. That's a mighty long way to travel. What brought you clear out to Kansas? Every question felt like a poke. My husband wanted to come west, Eliza answered plainly. And he passed on so soon after you got here? Leaving you with a baby in a strange land? The woman's voice was thick with fake concern that felt more like suspicion. We just wanted to welcome you, she said, and to let you know we take an interest in the welfare of our neighbors. The message was clear. We are watching you. After they rode off, Lucy came back out onto the porch. They don't like you, she said, her little face creased with worry. They don't know me, Eliza corrected gently, kneeling down to the girl's level. They think you are immoral, Lucy whispered, the word unfamiliar on her tongue. I heard them talking in town. That word just means they think someone is not following the rules they believe in, Eliza explained. Sometimes, Lucy, folks judge people just because they're different. Are you different? The girl asked. Yes, Eliza said honestly. I suppose I am. Good, Lucy stated with surprising fierceness. Different is better than all those ladies who come around pretending to care when they really just want to marry Papa. That evening, a bone-tired Ethan came home. Eliza served him a warm plate of stew without a word. As she turned to leave, he stopped her. I heard the Hendricks family stopped by. Yes, sir, she replied. They came to introduce themselves. What did they want? His jaw was tight. To find out if I am respectable, I reckon. The woman who saw you was Patricia Hendricks. She and her brothers think they run this county. She makes it her business to judge everyone and spread rumors. He looked her square in the eye. If you stay, she will make your life hard. They will all watch you and talk. It will not be easy. Eliza did not flinch. Mr. Cole, I came here to work and keep my boy alive. The rest is just noise. For the second time, Ethan looked at her with something like respect. He slowly nodded and finally started to eat. Eliza knew then that he was not just judging her anymore. He was trying to figure out if she was strong enough to survive the trouble that was surely headed her way. The Texas heat was already pressing down, making every breath feel like a chore. Eliza was up before the sun, needing to get the day's bread baked before the kitchen turned into an oven. It was her last day to prove she could stay. When Ethan walked in, he wasn't alone. Two women followed him. One was middle-aged and wore a plain dress. The other was younger, with perfect hair and a dress far too fancy for a morning visit to a ranch. Ethan's voice was flat. Mrs. Moore, this is Mrs. Sarah Harrison and her daughter Elizabeth. They're our neighbors. Then he added, Ladies, this is my housekeeper. He said the word housekeeper loud and clear, drawing a line in the sand. Eliza just nodded, feeling Elizabeth's eyes rake over her with pure scorn. After Eliza poured coffee, Elizabeth moved right next to Ethan. Mr. Cole, she began, there is a town social next Saturday. Mother and I would be so pleased if you and Lucy would come. Ethan shook his head. I do not attend social gatherings, Miss Harrison. Elizabeth pushed on. But Lucy needs to be around other children. It is not healthy for her to be so isolated out here. From across the room, Lucy spoke up, her small voice clear as a bell. I am not isolated. I have Mrs. Moore. Elizabeth's smile froze. Of course, dear, but Mrs. Moore is staff, not family. Ethan's voice cut through the air like a razor. Lucy has everything she needs. The room went cold. And I will thank you not to tell me how to raise my daughter. Mrs. Harrison quickly stood. We should be going, Elizabeth. Thank you for the coffee. But Elizabeth lingered, giving Eliza a look dripping with condescension. Mrs. Moore, she said sweetly, if you need any help understanding how we do things here, please feel free to ask me. When they finally left, the silence was heavy. Papa, Lucy said quietly, I do not like her. She was mean to Mrs. Moore. Ethan looked tired. This is what I warned you about, he said to Eliza. They will keep testing you, trying to put you in your place. Can you handle that? Eliza thought of everything she had already survived. This was nothing. I can handle it, Mr. Cole. The real question is, can you? For a second, he just looked at her. Then a small, genuine smile touched his lips. The week is almost over, Mrs. Moore. Tell me, are you worth keeping? Eliza glanced around the spotless kitchen. She thought of how Lucy now followed her everywhere, and how baby Thomas finally slept with a full belly. In just 6 days, this place felt warmer, like a home. I suppose that is for you to decide, Mr. Cole. He drank the last of his coffee and stood. I will give you my answer in the morning. That night, Eliza rocked Thomas, her heart pounding with fear. Everything depended on tomorrow. If Ethan Cole said no, she had nowhere to go. She pushed the thought away. She had survived worse. The next morning, she poured all her nervous energy into making the best breakfast she could. Bacon, eggs, biscuits, gravy, the works. When Ethan sat down, he ate in total silence. The quiet was so heavy, Eliza felt like she could barely breathe. Finally, he put down his fork and looked right at her. "Sit down, Mrs. Moore." Eliza's heart hammered in her chest as she sat. "I have given this a lot of thought," Ethan began. "You are a good worker, and the house has not run this well in years. More importantly, Lucy has taken to you." He paused and her hope began to fade. "But keeping you here will cause gossip. People will talk. Still, despite all that, I am willing to offer you a permanent job. You will have your room, food, and a small wage for as long as you are willing to stay." The sudden turn left Eliza speechless. She stared, sure she had heard him wrong. "You mean, I can stay? That is what I am saying. If you can handle the talk that comes with it." "I am willing," the words tumbled out of her. "Oh, I am absolutely willing. Thank you, Mr. Cole." "You work plenty hard already," Ethan said with that small smile. "Just keep on as you are." Lucy let out a happy cry and threw her arms around Eliza's waist. "You are staying. You are really staying." They finally had a home. After months of fear and uncertainty, Eliza felt a wave of relief so strong it almost brought her to her knees. She and Thomas were safe. She knew there would be challenges, but for now, that was enough. Later that afternoon, the sky turned dark and a heavy rain began to fall. The storm rolled in with a fury she had never seen back east. The little house felt warm and safe against the weather. She was so lost in thought she did not hear Ethan come in. "The storm is getting worse," he said. He was standing in the doorway, soaked clean through from his run from the barn. "You are dripping wet," she said, grabbing a towel for him. He took it with a nod. "I needed to check on the animals. These prairie storms can get bad, fast." "Where is Lucy?" "In her room," Eliza answered. "She gets scared when it storms like this." A loud clap of thunder shook the house, and Eliza jumped. "It seems you are not too fond of them either," Ethan noted, his voice softer than she had ever heard it. "Come away from the window." That night, a vicious storm hit the ranch. Eliza was downstairs, worried sick about the baby sleeping in his cradle. Suddenly, Ethan's voice cut through the thunder. "Eliza." It was the first time he had used her first name. It snapped her out of her fear. He looked at her with something like understanding. "The house is strong. You are safe here." Safe. It was a word she had not felt in a very long time. Just then a terrified scream came from upstairs. "Papa!" Ethan took the stairs two at a time with Eliza right behind him. They found Lucy wrapped in her father's arms, shaking and sobbing, completely lost in her fear. Without a second thought, Eliza knelt beside them. "Lucy," she said softly, her voice a calm anchor in the storm. "I need you to listen to my voice. Can you do that?" The little girl gave a tiny nod. "Good. Now breathe with me. In and out." Slowly, Lucy's ragged breaths began to match Eliza's steady rhythm. After a few minutes, the panic faded. "I am sorry, Papa," Lucy whispered. "I am 8 years old. I should not be scared of storms." Eliza smiled gently. "Everyone is scared of something. Being scared just makes you human." Lucy looked up. "Are you scared of storms?" "Terrified," Eliza admitted. "But you know what helps? Having people around you who are brave, like your papa." Eliza wrapped an arm around Lucy, a small comfort against the raging storm. Soon enough, the little girl was fast asleep. In the dim hallway, Ethan put a hand on Eliza's arm. "I appreciate what you did. I have never seen her calm down like that." Eliza nodded. "You cannot reason with fear. I learned that the hard way." He studied her face for a long moment. "Haven't we all, Mr. Cole?" she said quietly. "It is just Ethan," he replied. "If you are raising my daughter, you ought to call me Ethan." The air shifted between them. "All right, Ethan, now let us check on Thomas." Thomas slept right through the thunder. While Ethan checked the locks, Eliza dozed off in a chair beside the cradle. She woke near midnight to find a warm blanket draped over her, a kindness that startled her. In the weeks that followed, a routine settled in. Eliza would start the day with Thomas on her chest and Lucy at her heels. Ethan started talking more, even making a few dry jokes. She was learning the rhythms of his life, and the house began to feel like a safe place. That peace shattered late one August night. Eliza woke to Thomas fussing and knew instantly something was wrong. His skin was burning hot, and his cry was thin and weak. "No," she whispered, her hands shaking as she lifted him from the cradle. "Please, not this." The baby felt like he was on fire. His eyes were glassy, and he was too sick to even nurse. A familiar panic began to rise in her throat, choking her. This was the same kind of fever that took her husband. The thought sent a jolt of terror through her. She scrambled to the kitchen pump, her hands shaking as she soaked a cloth in cool water. But as she wiped him down, his breathing grew shallow and ragged. Suddenly, he was gasping for air. A raw scream tore from her throat. "Help me!" Ethan appeared in a second, his face grim and focused. "What is it?" he asked. "A fever," she cried out. "He cannot breathe." Ethan took Thomas from her, his touch surprisingly gentle. He examined the baby quickly under the lamp. "How long has he been like this?" he asked. "Just minutes," she sobbed. "He was fine." "I believe you," he said, his voice a calm anchor in her storm. "Lucy!" The girl appeared, her eyes wide with sleep. "Go wake Jackson. Tell him to ride for the doctor. Fast!" Lucy ran without a word. Ethan turned back to Eliza. "Bring me cold water and whiskey." Her hands still shook, but she did as he asked. "What are you doing?" she whispered. "Trying to break this fever and keep him breathing," Ethan said, working with a steady hand. "Talk to me, Eliza. Tell me about his day." The command helped to steady her. "He was happy," she said, her voice shaking. "There was no sign of anything being wrong." "Sometimes there is not," Ethan replied, his hands never still. "Look at his color." Eliza looked and her stomach dropped. "His lips, they are turning blue." "Damn," Ethan muttered, lifting Thomas upright against his chest. "Put your hand on his back. Feel that?" She felt a terrible rattling sound. "That is fluid. Pneumonia most likely. We have to keep him upright. It is going to be a long night, Eliza. I need you to be strong." Eliza knew this terrible sickness could steal her baby, the only thing she had left in the world. But Thomas needed her to be strong. She swallowed her fear and nodded. "Just tell me what to do." Ethan gently settled Thomas back into her arms. "Keep his head up, right there." He moved quickly, boiling water and draping a cloth over a chair to make a small steam tent. Eliza sat inside with Thomas, the warm vapors surrounding them. For a moment, his breathing seemed to get a little easier. Then, an awful cough shook his tiny body. When Eliza looked down, she saw blood on his lips. "Ethan," she cried out. The terror was back, sharp and cold. "He is coughing up blood." Ethan was by her side in a heartbeat, his hands steady as he checked the baby. "It is from his throat, not his lungs. It could be worse." But Thomas was growing weaker. His cries became soft whimpers, and his eyes started to roll back. Eliza felt the last bit of her hope shatter. "No, please, not him." Ethan's voice cut through her panic, sharp and clear. "Eliza, look at me. He is not gone. He is still fighting. We are still fighting." The words were like a splash of cold water. She took a deep, shaky breath and focused. They worked together through the darkest part of the night. At some point, Lucy appeared in the kitchen, her eyes wide with fright. "Is Thomas going to die?" she asked in a tiny voice. "No," Eliza said fiercely. "He is going to be fine." Lucy crept closer. "He is so hot. My mama got hot too before she—" Her words trailed off, but they all knew the ending. The long hours crawled by. The air smelled of steam and whiskey, which they used to try and cool the baby's burning skin. The sky outside began to lighten, but there was no sign of Jackson or the doctor. Thomas's breathing had become a terrible wet rattle. He was limp in Eliza's arms, his little face a pale gray. "Come on, baby," she whispered, rocking him. "Please stay with me." Ethan sat across from her, his face full of exhaustion. "Eliza," he said quietly, "if the worst happens, you need to know it is not your fault." "Do not say that," she begged, her voice cracking. "He has to be fine." "I just want you to know," he went on, "you have been a good mother." His simple kindness broke her. Hot tears spilled down her cheeks. "He is all I have left. If he dies, I will have nothing." "That is not true," Ethan said firmly. "You have a place here. Lucy needs you." He paused, then looked straight into her eyes. "And I need you. You have made this house feel like a home again." Before she could even process his words, They heard the sound of pounding hooves outside. Ethan flung the door open. Jackson was there, covered in mud and breathing hard. Beside him was an older man with a black bag. The doctor had arrived. "Where is he?" the doctor asked, skipping any greetings. "Here," Eliza said, holding Thomas out with trembling arms. "Please help him." The doctor, a man named Morrison, took Thomas and laid him on the table. His examination was fast and thorough, his expression serious. "Pneumonia," he confirmed. "It is advanced. The boy is in trouble." "Can you help him?" Eliza could barely get the words out. "I can try," he said, "but he is very sick. The next few hours will tell the story." Dr. Morrison opened his bag and they all jumped into action, boiling water and finding clean cloths. He managed to get a few drops of medicine between the baby's lips. Then came the worst part. He had to lance the baby's tiny arm to drain what he called bad humors. Thomas was too far gone to even react to the pain, which scared Eliza more than anything. She held his other hand, praying. Lucy came and stood beside her, slipping a small hand into hers. As the sun rose, the fever still raged. "I have done all I can," the doctor finally said, his voice heavy. "The rest is up to him." Just then, Eliza felt a tiny flutter in the hand she was holding. It was a weak squeeze. "Doctor," she breathed, a flicker of hope lighting up her face. "I think he just squeezed my finger." His hand was on her elbow, a steady anchor when she felt like she might fall. "You need to sit," he said, his voice low. "I have to stay with him." He gently guided her to a chair near the table. "You can stay with him from right here." Ethan stood behind her, his hands a warm, solid weight on her shoulders. With Lucy at her side, they circled Thomas, a small family holding back the darkness. Time blurred, the sun rose, and ranch hands brought news of the day's work, but Ethan sent them away with short orders. The doctor's face grew more worried with each visit. Finally, he pulled Ethan aside. "Mr. Cole," he said softly, "you should prepare her. The boy's breathing is failing. It might be time." Ethan's voice was like stone. "No, not yet. As long as he's breathing, we fight." The doctor tried to argue, but Ethan cut him off. "I said no, we don't give up on children in this house. Not while there's a flicker of hope." The hours crawled by. Thomas's breath became a faint whisper. His lips had a bluish tint, and Eliza knew his small body was losing the battle. She held his cold hand, the fever having faded, and began to say her goodbyes in the silence of her heart. "I love you, my sweet boy," she whispered. "You are the best part of my life. If you have to go, I'll understand, but please, just try to fight a little more." Lucy was crying softly beside her. Ethan's hands gripped her shoulders tighter. The doctor checked for a pulse one last time and slowly shook his head. Just as all hope seemed to vanish, Thomas gave a deep, rattling cough. A thick fluid came from his mouth. His eyes fluttered open and found hers. "Mama," he breathed, the clearest word he had ever spoken. "I'm here, baby. Mama's here," she whispered, her voice cracking. Thomas let out a hard cough, bringing up the sickness that had nearly claimed him. His breathing smoothed out, just a little. The doctor, Morrison, touched the boy's forehead. "Well, I'll be damned," he said, his voice full of surprise. "His fever is breaking." Color was seeping back into Thomas's tiny face. Then came the sound she had prayed for, a strong, angry cry. He was fighting. He was alive. Eliza finally let the tears come, holding her son while he wailed, alive and miserable. To Eliza, his cries were the sweetest music on earth. He was going to make it. The days that followed were a tired haze. Dr. Morrison left his orders and said he would be back in 3 days. But it was all on Eliza now. She hardly slept. Ethan moved her into a better room upstairs, carrying the cradle himself. Lucy would not leave her side, sleeping on a pallet on the floor. "What if he needs me?" the little girl asked. So the three of them holed up together, bound by the quiet miracle of Thomas's survival. Thomas got stronger each day. After 5 days, the fever was gone and he was nursing again. But Eliza could not shake the fear. On the 6th night, Ethan found her dozing in a chair, the baby asleep in her arms. He brought a tray of food. "When is the last time you ate?" he asked. She could not remember. "Lucy says you have not been downstairs all day," Ethan said, his voice firm. "You look half dead. Give him to me and you eat." Eliza clutched Thomas tighter, and a look of understanding passed over Ethan's face. I will sit right here with him, Ethan said softly, pulling up a chair. You just eat. She was too exhausted to fight him. She passed the baby over, surprised by how gently the big man held him. Thomas settled right against his chest. Eliza ate everything on the tray, realizing she was starved. When she finished and reached for her son, Ethan did not hand him back. We need to talk, he said, his voice low and serious. While you were busy with the boy, a man came to the ranch 3 days ago. He was asking for you. All the color drained from Eliza's face. The past she had run from had finally found her. What did he look like? She whispered. A tall man, dressed fancy, rode a fine horse, said his name was Cornelius Ashford, and that you were his daughter-in-law. Eliza squeezed her eyes shut. What did you tell him? I told him he had the wrong place. He did not buy it and started making threats, Ethan said, his jaw tight. So I had the boys see him off the property. Told him not to come back. He will, Eliza said, her voice hollow. He will never stop. Ethan looked her square in the eyes. Who is this man? Taking a breath, she finally said it. He is my dead husband's father. He claims Thomas belongs to him now, that I am unfit to raise the Ashford heir. He says I come from inferior stock and my common ways will ruin the boy. Lucy piped up, her voice full of fire. That is just mean. You are not inferior to anybody. Eliza's heart warmed at the little girl's fierce loyalty. To men like Cornelius, she was just a secretary from one of his offices, a woman he never approved of for his son James. When James died from a fever, Cornelius blamed me for it. I ran west hoping he would never find us, but he has eyes everywhere. He will be back with lawyers saying I am a destitute, unstable mother. Rich men usually get what they want. Ethan's voice was firm as an oak tree. Not in Kansas, they do not. A mother's rights still mean something out here. His power in the East does not mean he will win this fight. You are not facing this by yourself, Eliza. You and Thomas are part of this home now. I will be damned if I let some fancy Eastern gentleman just take him. But Eliza was worried. He will use the fact that I am living here with you, unmarried. He will twist it into something ugly, saying I am living in sin and corrupting his grandson. Ethan's voice was pure steel. Then let him try. Ethan knelt so he could look her square in the eye. We give him no ammunition to use. We make sure there is no question about your good name. We get married. The words hung in the air, stunning her into silence. What? She finally whispered. We get married, he repeated calmly. Then Mr. Ashford will find a stable home with a married couple raising their children. No scandal, no impropriety, nothing. But we barely know each other, she protested. You do not love me. A shadow of old pain crossed Ethan's face. No one can ever replace my Sarah. But she has been gone 2 years, Eliza. This house has been cold and empty for 2 long years. You brought warmth back. You are strong. Watching you fight for your boy showed me that. That is the kind of woman I would want helping me raise my daughter. What if you lose Thomas because you were too afraid to accept help? Ethan asked gently. Can you live with that risk? A small voice cut in. If you marry Papa, will you be my new mama? Lucy looked up, her eyes wide with hope. The question broke through Eliza's fear. The little girl wrapped her arms around Eliza's neck. Please marry him and stay with us forever. Over Lucy's shoulder, Eliza met Ethan's steady gaze, and she knew what she had to do. There was a deep trust between them, something solid enough to build on. All right, Eliza heard herself say, I will marry you, but this is for protection, for the children. This is not about love. Understood, Ethan said, and she could see the relief on his face. We will be a family to the world. When? Tomorrow, he answered. The sooner it is done, the safer you are. This is crazy, she whispered. The best decisions usually are, Ethan said, turning to leave. He paused at the door. Thank you for trusting me. Thank you for the offer, she replied. Not many men would do this. Then not many men are worth knowing. When Ethan's footsteps faded, Lucy bounced on the bed, her eyes bright. You're really going to be my mama? Really and truly, Eliza said, her voice steadier than she felt. But Lucy, this is not a fairy tale. Your papa and I are doing this to keep Thomas safe and give you a proper family. It may feel strange for a while. I don't care, Lucy said, her face aglow. You'll be here, that's all that matters. Can I call you Mama now? The question was a sweet ache in Eliza's chest. You can call me whatever feels right. Mama, Lucy whispered, trying out the word. I like that. Eliza held Thomas tight, fighting back tears. Her whole life had just been turned upside down. Tomorrow she would marry a man she hardly knew to protect her son. It was a terrifying, practical plan. But looking at these two children, she knew it was the only choice. Whatever was coming, they would face it together. Morning arrived all too soon. Today was her wedding day. The thought made her stomach flutter. After feeding Thomas and helping Lucy get dressed, she looked at her own meager clothes. Her best dress, a simple gray cotton, would have to be good enough. She had no veil, no jewelry, nothing to mark the occasion. Just as the sun was rising, Ethan knocked. He was in his Sunday best, looking stiff and much younger. I'm riding into town, he said, not quite meeting her gaze, to talk to Reverend Phillips. We can be married this afternoon if you're still of a mind. Her voice was firm, even if her hands trembled. I am. Then she asked, what will we tell people? Why are we doing this so suddenly? Eliza asked, her voice barely a whisper. Ethan looked her square in the eye. Because it's time. Folks will talk, sure. Some will say I'm taking advantage of you. Others will claim you trapped me. He paused, his jaw set hard. What matters is that when Cornelius Ashford comes calling, it'll be too late for him to do a thing about it. The threat of that man was a constant storm on the horizon. Running hadn't worked. Hiding had failed. This was her last stand, and she wouldn't be alone. I'll be ready, she said, finding a strength she didn't know she had. Ethan just nodded once and left for town. The hours that followed were a blur. One moment, Ethan's daughter Lucy was braiding Eliza's hair, chattering about becoming a real family. The next, a cloud of dust announced visitors. Eliza looked out the window and her breath caught. Ethan had returned not just with the preacher, but with half the county. There was the doctor, Mrs. Harrison, and even Patricia Hriss, a woman who'd made her own interest in Ethan quite clear. He was building a wall of witnesses, making their marriage as solid as bedrock. Come on, Mama, Lucy said, tugging her hand. That simple word, Mama, struck Eliza right in the heart. In just a few moments, it would be true. She picked up her son, Thomas, and walked down the stairs to face her future. The main room was filled with familiar faces, all watching her. Ethan stood beside the preacher, looking steady and determined. When his eyes met hers, his entire expression softened for a heartbeat. He walked to the bottom of the stairs to meet her. He gently took the baby from her arms and handed him to a beaming Lucy. Then Ethan turned back to Eliza and took both of her hands in his. His touch was warm and reassuring. The preacher's words about partnership and commitment washed over her. Then came the moment of truth. I do. Ethan's voice rang out, firm and unwavering. When the preacher turned to her, the question hung in the air. This was it. She was binding her life and her son's life to this man, for better or for worse. I do, she finally whispered, the words sealing their pact. I now pronounce you husband and wife, the preacher said with a kind smile. Ethan leaned down and placed a simple, respectful kiss on her forehead. It wasn't a kiss of passion, but a kiss of promise. Mrs. Cole, Ethan said softly, trying out her new name. Mr. Cole, she replied, and felt the weight of that name settle on her shoulders like a warm, protective cloak. The room erupted in polite applause and congratulations. Some folks seemed genuinely happy, others less so, but every single one of them signed the marriage certificate as a witness. It was done. It was legal. Cornelius could rage and threaten all he wanted. Eliza Cole was a married woman now, with a husband who had already proven he would fight for her family. That night, long after the guests had gone, Eliza sat alone in her room. She was married. After so many months of running scared, she finally had a home and a measure of safety. The road ahead with Ethan was uncertain, a partnership born of necessity, not love. But as she thought of the future, she wasn't filled with dread. For the first time in what felt like forever, she felt a flicker of real, honest-to-goodness hope. Hope that she and her son were finally safe. The morning sun felt harsh as it streamed through the window. Eliza had barely slept. She was grateful when Thomas woke her, needing something real and immediate to focus on. When she walked into the kitchen, Ethan was already there, with coffee brewing and breakfast on the table. For a long moment, they just looked at each other, a husband and wife who were still complete strangers. Morning, now, he finally said. Morning. She shifted Thomas on her hip, feeling awkward. You cooked. Figured it was my turn, he said, pouring her a cup of coffee with sugar, just the way she liked it. He had been paying attention. Sit down and eat, he said. We need to talk about what comes next. Eliza sat, picking at her food. What is there to talk about? We are married. Now we just wait. It is more than that, Ethan said, his eyes serious. Yesterday changed everything. We need to decide how this family is going to work. For Lucy, for the hands, for us. I thought we had an understanding. Ethan, a practical arrangement, separate lives. We do, Eliza, but little Lucy is watching them. If we act like strangers, that child will know something's not right. Kids always do. His face softened. I am not asking for a grand romance, but we ought to be partners. We should show her two people who chose to make a family. He was right. So much for just a legal protection. What do you have in mind? We can start small, eat together, talk about our days, let Lucy see us as a team, people who respect one another. The rest, well, we can figure that out as we go along. That sounds fair, she said, sipping her coffee. Thank you for this, Ethan, for helping me protect Thomas. You did not ask, I offered, he corrected gently, and I meant it at the wedding. This house needed you. Lucy needed you. And maybe I needed you too. Just then, Lucy ran into the room. Are we a real family now? Can we do family things? Ethan smiled. Like what, little darling? Like picnics and working in the garden, she said, climbing onto a chair beside Eliza. Mama used to do those things with me. The word mama aimed at Eliza made her breath catch. She looked at Ethan, seeing her own doubt in his eyes. We can do all those things, Eliza said softly. What do you want to do first? Can we work in the garden? Mama always said working with the earth was peaceful. I have not been out there much since she passed on. It made Papa too sad. Ethan cleared his throat. It did. But maybe it is time we make some new memories there, instead of just holding on to the old ones. That morning, the three of them worked in the overgrown garden, with baby Thomas sleeping in a basket nearby. As they pulled weeds and gathered squash, a comfortable rhythm settled between them. Lucy's happy chatter filled the quiet spaces. Mama used to say gardens are like families, Lucy said, placing a tomato in her basket. They need tending, and they get messy, but growing things is always worth it. Your mama was a very wise woman, Eliza said, and she meant every word. She looked over at Ethan, who was working the soil with his hands, a look of peace finally on his face. This was a place of new life now, not just loss. It was then that they heard the thunder of approaching horses. Ethan was on his feet in an instant, tense and alert. He put himself between his family and the oncoming riders. Eliza's heart pounded when she saw the man in the lead, Cornelius Ashford. Well now, there you are, Cornelius said, his voice smooth as silk but twice as deadly. Clever changing your name, Elizabeth, but not clever enough. Her name is Eliza Cole, Ethan stated flatly, and you are trespassing on my land. State your business and be on your way. Cornelius eyed Ethan with pure dismissal. Ah, the rancher. I do not take kindly to being lied to, Mr. Cole, and I do not take kindly to rich city men making demands on my property. Now what do you want? I want my grandson, he said, dismounting. Elizabeth here ran off with my son's child. I am here to correct her mistake. I left because you tried to take my son from me, Eliza cried out. You have no right. I have every right. James was my son, which makes Thomas my heir. You, my dear, are a nobody. You were never good enough for my boy, and you are certainly not fit to raise an Ashford. He smiled a cold, thin smile. I have legal papers. A judge back in Pittsburgh agrees the boy belongs with me. That Eastern judge has no say out here, Ethan said. This is Kansas. That is why I have a writ from the territorial court right here, one of his men announced, holding up a folder. Now, hand over the boy, and we can avoid any trouble. No, Eliza said, her voice shaking but firm. You are not taking him. I will not let you. Oh, you do not have a choice. The law is with me. Cornelius stepped forward, but Ethan blocked his path. Actually, she does have a choice, Ethan said, his voice dangerously quiet. And so do I. You see, Mr. Ashford, your information is old. Eliza is not some poor widow anymore. As of yesterday, she is my wife. That makes me Thomas's legal father. The shock on Cornelius's face was a sight to behold. You married her? How very convenient. It was the right time for us, Ethan lied smoothly. We have plenty of witnesses, from the reverend to the doctor. It is all legal and binding. Your claim is worthless, Ashford. Thomas has two parents and a good home. Now I expect you to get on your horse and leave my property. Ethan interrupted, his voice like cold steel. This is a sham, Cornelius snarled, his face turning red. A fraud! You have no idea who you are dealing with. I have power you cannot imagine. I will destroy you. I will ruin this little ranch and make sure you never— Papa! Lucy screamed, her voice cutting through the threats. She dropped her basket, pointing with a trembling finger toward the barn. Smoke was pouring from the windows. The barn is on fire. It all happened in a flash. Ethan swore and bolted for the barn, shouting for his men. Cornelius and his thugs looked at each other, and Eliza saw a flicker of guilt on the old man's face. Was this his doing? Before she could think, thick smoke poured from the barn. She heard the terrified screams of the horses trapped inside. She pushed Thomas into Lucy's arms. Take your brother to the house and lock the doors. Do not come out until I say so. But Mama, now Lucy! Eliza was already running. Ethan and two hands were struggling with the barn doors, fighting the weight of panicked animals pushing from within. The heat was a living thing, and flames were climbing the hay-stacked wall. Get the horses out, Ethan yelled, his face black with soot. Eliza did not hesitate. She soaked a rag in the water trough, tied it over her face, and ran straight into the choking smoke. She fumbled for a latch in the darkness, threw it open, and a terrified horse thundered past, nearly trampling her on its way to safety. Flames lit up the nightscape. The barn was on fire. Eliza did not hesitate. She ran with Ethan and the ranch hands, pulling open stalls to free the terrified animals. The smoke was so thick she could barely breathe, but she kept moving. This ranch was her home now, and she would not let anyone destroy it. Finally, the last horse was safe. Ethan grabbed her arm and pulled her out just as the roof caved in. They fell to the ground, coughing and gasping for air. It took 2 hours to put the fire out. The barn was a ruin, but the animals were safe, and the house was untouched. Eliza sat beside Ethan, covered in soot, her body shaking. They had saved it. They had survived. Is everyone okay? Ethan's voice cut through the haze. We're all right, boss, Jackson answered. Nothing a little time won't fix. Cornelius walked over, his fine suit a mess of ash and soot. He looked like a smaller man now. Mr. Cole, Mrs. Cole, I need to explain. You owe us a hell of a lot more than that, Ethan shot back. Was this your doing? No, Cornelius said, his voice sharp. I would never hurt a child. Seeing that fire, it showed me how wrong I'd been. Eliza just stared, searching his face for the truth. What are you trying to say? I'm saying I was a prideful old fool. My son James loved you, Eliza. He told me how happy you made him, but I was too stubborn to listen. So you came after his boy? Ethan asked, his voice cold as iron. Because I was a lonely man trying to fill a hole in my heart. But then I saw you run into that fire for those animals. That showed me your heart. It showed me the kind of mother Thomas deserves. Tears streamed down Eliza's face, mixing with the soot. Are you saying you'll leave us be? Give up the lawsuit? More than that. Cornelius took a stack of papers from his coat and ripped them in half, then again. I was wrong. Thomas belongs right here with you. His voice cracked. I just want a chance to know my grandson, if you'll have me. His home is here, with his family. I see that now. Ethan put a strong arm around Eliza. That's up to her. He's her son. Eliza looked at the old man, who was full of regret. She thought about Thomas having a grandfather, even one far away. You can visit, she said, her voice steady. A couple times a year, you write him letters. But we are his parents. You will respect that. I will. You have my word. Cornelius shook Ethan's hand, then turned to Eliza with a nod of true respect. Thank you, and Eliza, I am sorry for how I treated you, for trying to take your son. You are a stronger woman than I ever knew. Forgiveness wouldn't come easy, but it was a start. An hour later, Cornelius was gone. Eliza watched his buggy disappear and felt a weight lift off her soul. Thomas was safe. They were all safe. We've got a big cleanup ahead, Ethan said, looking at the burned barn. We'll manage, Eliza replied, gazing at the house where Lucy held Thomas by the window. The weeks that followed were full of hard work. Neighbors showed up to help rebuild the barn the way folks do out here. Eliza and Ethan's relationship began to change too. They started spending their evenings just talking, sharing stories. They were no longer just partners in a deal. They were becoming a family. The awkwardness was replaced by a real warmth. He'd soften when he saw her, with Thomas, and she found herself looking for him during the day. They stopped calling it an arrangement. They started calling it our marriage. Lucy's nightmares went away, and she started calling Eliza Mama. Thomas was growing big and strong, a happy baby. Eliza's grief for James was still there, but now it was gentle, wrapped in gratitude for the new life she had found. One evening in late September, Ethan found her in the garden. The sun was setting, casting a golden light over the prairie. Eliza, he thought, his voice quiet. She stood and wiped the dirt from her hands. Can we talk? Is something wrong? No, not at all. It's just... He searched for the words. I've been thinking about us, about this agreement we made. Eliza's heart fell. She knew this quiet peace couldn't last forever. If you want to change things, if this is not working for you, that is not it at all, Ethan said, stepping closer. I'm saying that for me, somewhere down the line, this stopped being just an agreement. Ethan's voice was low and steady. He said, through all of it, the fire, rebuilding this barn, and talking late into the night, I started to care about you, Eliza. Not as part of a deal, but as you. His words felt brand new in the quiet air. Eliza held her breath. Ethan, this was supposed to be a practical arrangement, she said softly. He reached out, his work-roughened hand gently taking hers. I know what we said, but my feelings are real. I am tired of separate rooms and pretending this is just business. I want a real marriage with you. She looked down at their joined hands, then up at the man who had given her a safe place for her and Thomas. I have been feeling it too, she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. I just did not know if I was allowed to, because of our agreement and because of Sarah. I will always love Sarah, he said gently, but I have learned something in. A heart does not run out of room. It just expands to make space for new love. And my heart has so much space for you. A laugh escaped her, tangled with happy tears. That is the most romantic thing anyone has ever said to me. He smiled. So is that a yes? Will you be my wife in truth, not just on paper? Yes, she breathed, stepping into his arms and feeling like she was finally home. Yes, for real this time, for always. He kissed her then. It was not like the quick kiss at their wedding. This was deep and sure, full of all the unspoken feelings they had held back. When they finally parted, they were both smiling through tears. Come on, he said, taking her hand. Let us go tell Lucy she is getting a real family. They walked toward the house as the last bit of sunlight faded from the sky, ready to start their life together, not as strangers, but as partners. Lucy was on the porch with Thomas. When she saw them holding hands, her face lit up with a big smile. Does this mean you love each other now? For real? For real, meaning Eliza confirmed, her heart overflowing as she knelt to hug her new daughter. Ethan pulled her close and scooped up Thomas in his other arm. Right there on that porch, they were a family. She remembered showing up with nothing, just a desperate woman hoping for a little milk to save her son. She was only trying to survive another day. But instead of being turned away, she found a home. She found a love she never dreamed of. Her life, once so empty, was now full of promise. They knew there would be hard times ahead, but they would face every single one of them together. The children grew up happy and strong. Thomas learned to walk, never knowing how close he came to being taken away from his mother. 6 months later, Cornelius returned. This time he was welcomed not as an enemy, but as a grandfather. He stayed for 3 days, telling stories and making a quiet peace for the child they both loved. The ranch thrived, Eliza's garden grew, the barn was full, and the once empty house was filled with the sounds of a family. It was full of laughter and quiet talks between two people building a life. Eliza often stood by the fields, thinking about the woman she used to be. She had arrived at that gate broken and afraid. Now she was Eliza Cole, a wife and a mother. When Ethan wrapped his arms around her and the children came running, She knew she was exactly where she belonged. She came to the ranch needing milk, but she found everything that truly mattered. She learned that family is not just about blood, it is about choosing to love each other every single day. As the sun set over the prairie, Eliza finally knew she was home. Model.